I want to introduce you to Zephyr. It's the world's first privacy stablecoin. It was the first project to ever build a stablecoin that is both private and decentralized. It was launched in 2023. They've been building since that time. You see on crypto Twitter and in the crypto sphere in general, there is a lot of discussion around the narrative of stablecoins and the narrative of privacy. Zcash exploded. We see a lot of privacy discussion. And now we're seeing stablecoin and privacy come together in that narrative where people are wondering, is there a privacy stablecoin? Well, actually, yes, it started in 2023 and they've been building. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what Zephyr is. If you haven't heard of it, you can go to their website, zephyrprotocol.com. So we're going to talk a little bit about this. Let's go through this pitch deck. This pitch deck is actually from the marketing team. They put it in their Discord, so I'm just going to go through this quickly. Zephyr really is the killer app. It's the world's first truly private, decentralized stablecoin. And not only is Zephyr the world's first privacy stablecoin, it also delivers very competitive, sustainable APY. So you can stake your stable dollar, which is private, in the wallet, and in return, you're paid out every 2 minutes additional value in stable coins. Zephyr is built on Monero code and ZEPH protocol code. So if you have any questions about that, you can look at some of my other videos. The fact of the matter is people really want stable coins that have good APY. There is a lot of demand for that. We've seen in the past there's a lot of demand. We see currently there's a ton of demand for that. And not only is Zephyr the first privacy stablecoin, it also has the best sustainable APY on a stablecoin. If you don't believe that, you should dig into the research and see for yourself why that is and how is it possible that they could have the best APY. And I'll just tell you now, it's because the yield doesn't come from traditional sources of yield. It comes from a unique new place, which is essentially block emissions. I have made other videos about that. You can look at those. So the Zephyr stable dollar, ZSD, is over-collateralized. It's backed by a cryptocurrency called ZEPH, and I talked about this at length in a previous video. You can watch that. It has rock-solid foundation. It's built on Monero's codebase, which Monero has been battle-tested for decades, and so we're taking all of that legacy and moving that forward. Luna and UST are algorithmic burn mint type stablecoins where they mint and burn their token in order to maintain the peg, whereas Zephyr doesn't use that code whatsoever. It uses something called ZEPH protocol, which is a mechanism that always mathematically shows and proves that there is more collateral than there is value of stablecoins. And whenever the collateral drops, then certain rules come into place where it would incentivize individuals to back the collateral or add more collateral to that stablecoin and to back the stablecoin better. And I go into a lot of depth in another video on that, so you can check that out. One of the rules of the ZEPH protocol is that there always has to be a 400% buffer. And what that means is when somebody wants to go and mint ZSD, they can only do that when there's more than 400% collateral. If there's less, you can't mint more ZSD. That protects the peg. And if the collateral drops more and more because the price of ZEPH is dropping, because ZEPH is the collateral, then the protocol will essentially balance itself out by allowing the ZSD minters to burn or unmint their ZSD. And it also incentivizes others to back the stablecoin more by adding ZEPH into the reserve and by collateralizing it. And they do that because they're incentivized through basically this kind of leverage position that they get where they are able to make more money by backing the reserve, and then that would increase this buffer, essentially bringing it above 400%, allowing more people to mint ZSD. And since Zephyr Protocol has been live all the way back starting in 2023, the price actually went up to $52 on hype. And of course, there weren't a lot of coins in circulation at that time, so supply and demand played a role in that. And then since that time, it did go all the way down to about 50 cents. And never over that period of time did the stablecoin ever depeg. And that's because it is like a gyroscopic balancing system, where as the collateral drops, the ZSD individuals can unmint if they want to, and then other people can add more collateral. And so it's really self-balancing. I've talked a lot about this in previous videos. Here are some other rules. We're not going to get into this. I have talked about this a lot. There are 4 coins that make up the ZEPH ecosystem. We have ZEPH, which is the main token. It's the volatile asset. It's similar to Monero XMR. Then you have the stable dollar. That's self-explanatory. You have ZRS. That's the coin that you get when you provide collateral to back the stable coin. And the reason you would want to add collateral and back the stablecoin is because you would get ZRS in return. And ZRS will have a kind of leverage effect and has the potential to grow quite a bit because it gets ZEPH from block emissions. And that's something I've talked a lot about. And then last but not least, we have the Zephyr yield share, which is a coin that you get for staking ZSD. So if I want to earn yield on my stable coin, then all I have to do is stake my stable dollars into the wallet, and then I'll get ZYS in return, which is like a contract or a coin that says, hey, I'm getting yield, I'm getting APY. So that when I swap my ZYS back to ZSD, then I get more ZSD in return, which is the yield essentially. And ZYS is basically like savings ZSD. If you're familiar with DAI and savings DAI, ZYS basically is savings ZSD. And so you could think about it that way. But it currently has some of the best APY in all of DeFi. So I do recommend you check out my videos on that. The Zephyr ecosystem has everything that really the DeFi world is looking for. Decentralization. There's no central party that can freeze these assets. It's private. Nobody's going to be able to know private information that you don't want to share. There are stablecoins natively built in from the ground up. It's not like it is some type of private stablecoin that goes onto a privacy chain. It is built in. The coin itself is private. The stablecoin is private. And the stablecoin gets yield. And the yield doesn't come from the traditional sources of yield, such as lending and borrowing, or all of these other techniques that they use, which I've talked at length about in a previous video. But the yield for the Zephyr stable dollar comes from block emissions, which is basically unheard of. So they're innovating in ways nobody has ever done. And it's not like they're new. They've been around for a while. And now people are starting to kind of have this narrative line up with what Zephyr has been building. So I do recommend you look into Zephyr more if this is of interest to you. Partly why Zephyr may not be mainstream yet is because the concept itself had a challenge where privacy stablecoins wasn't a narrative. It hasn't really been a narrative until right now, and still that narrative is not really mainstream. And of course, there's regulatory issues, right? And so there's not a ton of incentive to hold a stablecoin that's private. However, there is a lot of incentive to hold a stablecoin that earns yield. So about a year ago, Zephyr decided to build a yield mechanism where if you stake the stablecoin, you'll earn yield. And so that was something that they invented essentially. The way that they did that was an innovative process by getting yield from block emissions. And so it's kind of like an experiment in a way where now it's been running for 13 months and the actual APY has blown everything out of the water. And now there is more incentive to get the stable coin because the only way you can actually get the yield is to purchase the stable coin. And so this is relatively new, and Zephyr is bridging over to Ethereum, so there's going to be a lot of adoption taking place. You might be a little bit curious about how the APY works, so I'll just go into that very briefly. ZEPH is a cryptocurrency. It has a value, and the block emissions has value to it. So every block, it has a certain amount of value. And 5% of that value is added to a reserve, which is split amongst all the ZYS holders. So for the amount of competition for that reserve, the more people who are in the reserve or the less people who are in it, that will determine how much APY there is because they split that 5% value. So if there's more people, you'll get less value. But if the price of ZEPH goes higher, then the value will be higher, and that also influences the APY. So there's really just two things. If the ZEPH price goes up, APY goes up. If the yield competition goes up, then the APY rate goes down because it's more competitive. So there's those two variables, and they go up and down, and they basically influence the APY rate. If you have more questions about this, I did a whole video about it. You can take a look at that one. Staking ZSD in the Zephyr wallet resulted in 68% APY. So if you put $100 in on day one, you would have $168 after 1 year. And this is essentially blowing everything out of the water when it comes to other DeFi stablecoin yield. And the question probably becomes, well, that's not sustainable, or it's because there's not a lot of competition for the yield. And if you're asking that question, it's probably because you haven't watched my other videos, which go into detail and outline that actually when there's more competition to get into the Zephyr yield share pool, which is basically like saying I'm going to stake my ZSD, you actually push the APY higher because the APY actually comes from block emissions. And the only way to get ZSD is to get ZEPH. And if you buy ZEPH, ZEPH is going to go higher in value. So yeah, I'm not going to get into too much detail around why this is sustainable, but it is sustainable. If you don't think it is, or if you're curious about why it is, you can watch my other videos. I talk at length about why this APY is very sustainable. It could even go higher than 68%. Next year, it could be 100%. So if you're curious about that, definitely watch my other videos. Like I said before, here are some more details. 5% of every block is converted into ZSD and added to the pool, and then the pool appreciates over time. Here is a further explanation of how the APY is variable. And like I said before, if the price of ZEPH goes up, then the APY can go up. If the ZEPH price goes down, APY goes down. If the ZYS competition, the number of people who stake ZSD goes up, then the APY goes down. And if the people who stake ZSD is lowered, if less people are doing it, then the APY goes higher because the number of people splitting the ZSD from the block emissions is less people, therefore they get more money. I've talked a lot about this in a previous video, so I don't want to go into it too much. It is true that a lot of people talk about flywheel effects in crypto Twitter and in the crypto sphere. A lot of the flywheel talk, I would say, is not legitimate because flywheels go in both directions, and in many cases, that's not really a flywheel then. In this case, it's more true that it is a genuine flywheel in that as people want to get yield, ZSD has to be minted. And as ZSD is minted, that means ZEPH is being purchased at the market. And that means the price of ZEPH goes higher, which means the block emissions is higher, which means the APY is higher. So when people want to get in to that APY, even though the competition goes higher, the price of ZEPH goes higher. So if you just kind of understand that, then it will start to click for you that, oh, it's true that as more people want to get the APY, in traditional DeFi, the APY always goes down. But in Zephyr's case, the more people who want to get the APY will actually drive the price higher because the only way you can get into that APY is by driving the price higher. And the reason it drives the price higher is because the only way you can get ZSD and stake that ZSD is by first buying ZEPH and swapping it to ZSD. That's how the protocol works. When it bridges over to Ethereum, you won't really have to buy ZEPH. You could just buy ZSD, or you can even just buy ZYS actually, and then bots and arbitrage will essentially do all the other work behind the scenes for you. But all of that will push the price of Zeph higher. I've actually made a video about this. Going to make another video about this, about the Zephyr flywheel effect and how it's really unique. And so, yeah, stay tuned for that. Lastly, accessibility is really important. It should be easy to get ZYS and really good APY. And soon you will be able to use your MetaMask or Trust Wallet or favorite DeFi platform to easily get access to ZYS, swap your current token over to ZYS, and within moments, you will have access to some of the best APY in the entire DeFi ecosystem. So stay tuned for that Ethereum bridge. And you can actually test out the bridge. There is a test net right now, and we encourage people to take a look at that. I've taken a big deep dive into that, and it's working well, and I'm very excited for this bridge. If you guys have any questions, you should go to the website. It's zephyrprotocol.com. You can ask your questions below. I'll see if I can answer them for you. In conclusion, Zephyr Protocol really is at the narrative of privacy and stablecoins. And I think that that narrative is going to be a tailwind for Zephyr in terms of its market cap and its adoption and its growth. The fact of the matter is, who doesn't want 30% APY on a stablecoin? The people who don't want it are the ones who think that it's not legitimate or not sustainable or that it's dangerous. And that would be very reasonable. If you did a little bit of research, you'd find that actually it is sustainable. The stable dollar has never depegged, and it will continue to have very appealing APY, and other people will recognize that, and then trust will build, and then people will realize having a privacy stablecoin with some of the best APY in all of DeFi is actually a pretty nice thing, and they might want to just buy the Zephyr underlying asset itself, which would push the market cap higher also, and people will jump on this narrative. It has the best narrative right now. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might be interested in this.